Let us start the 36th session of Secrets of Spirituality. Just to have a recap, the omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, divine, infinite consciousness causes the creation of non-moving life forms, starting with the cells, gradually plant cells and animal cells, then gradually plants and trees. And these are called sthavara or non-moving. And then evolving further into moving life forms such as worms, fishes, amphibians, insects, reptiles, birds, mammals, and finally one subset of mammals is humans. And this life form is called as jangama or moving. Now it is the same self which is omnipresent gradually creates vehicles for its own dwelling, and it uses all these bodies as its own vehicles as such. So sthavara is again divided into jivaja and udbhija, means cells and plants. Jangama again into svedaja, andaja, jarayuja and manuja. Now this ego, which is individually present in the moving life forms, is not present with the non-moving life forms. But still there is life in these non-moving life forms. And there is growth happening in the non-moving life forms. So, in the moving life forms, there is brain. And this brain is designed as a storehouse for the memorizing of the living experiences. That means the sensory perceptions are going to be stored in the brain, and through the brain itself, the individual ego is being manifested. But for the causation of the brain itself, or for the formation of the body itself in the womb, who is deciding? If the tree is going to have flowers on its body, and the flowers are having enough petals and colors and fragrance, who is deciding? Because in the trees or in the plants, there is no brain as such. So brain itself is formed because of some other ego. And that ego we call it as natural ego. Now if this natural ego has to be there in nature, through which life is created, through which bodies are created, then how come all these decisions of creation comes into picture? And how come all these recombinations of materials into bodies comes into picture? Now the cause for that natural ego is the divine ego. So that way, the divine ego is of spiritual dimension, natural ego is of physical dimension, and the individual ego is of chemical dimension. Why I call it as chemical? Because all these moving life forms are having brain. In the brain, the ego itself is of chemical form as such. When you go daily night into sleep, you will not have any awareness of your sensory perceptions, nor you will be having ego also in the deep sleeping state. Which means this ego is systematically formed for the usage of sense organs and for getting involved in the activities. And in the deep sleeping state, this ego is again being dissolved. So we should come to a conclusion that the individual ego is the result of chemical reaction that is happening within the brain. Now the cause for this chemical reaction or the planning of this particular system of individual ego is under nature, and nature has its own intelligence in forming the bodies. So when nature has its own intelligence, that intelligence is again part of another dimension of ego, and that is because of the physical combination of many materials. So that we call it as physical dimension. And again, going back to the source, when all these materials are basically because of the vibration of the divine infinite consciousness, the consciousness makes its own decision so as to become life, and that is what is divine ego. So we name it as Daiva, Prakriti and Vyakti. Now in most of the cases, learning has to happen to the individual ego about the natural ego, because it is the individual ego which is involved in action and reaction. Now all other life forms except the human beings, all other life forms have their own salvation. Only the human beings have to put an effort for salvation. Not the innocent human beings, but the ignorant human beings. I'll tell you gradually how. Now in the yogic path, once you get into meditative state, you are actually trying to become egoless. Which means once you get into meditative state, when you try to stop your thoughts, because thoughts are basically recalling an information from the memory and joining that information with some other information that is already in the memory, then keeping on generating thoughts after thoughts. That is the basic activity of the mind. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandhamokshayoho bandhaya vishayasaktam muktya nirvishayam smritam is told in the Upanishad. So once you get into meditation or into dhyana, you are actually trying to reduce the formation of thoughts. And when there are no formation of thoughts, the basic process of recalling from the memory, if that itself is not happening, then the individual ego has no functionality at all. Because as long as you are in the awakened state, you are thinking, then you are acting. Always thought and action are together. Now that is what is karma. Now if this individual ego itself has no functionality as such, because memory recall itself is being stopped or thoughts are being controlled, then the individual ego has no functionality. Naturally, whatever caused the individual ego, that comes into picture. Now, which caused the individual ego? The natural ego caused the individual ego. For example, in the brain, if you are involved in thinking, and through your body, if you are involved in working, now initially you will stop your body working, and then you will stop your brain that is thinking. That is the process of dhyana. Dhyanam nirvishayam manaha. But at that time, what will actually happen to the body? Body has been functioning even during deep sleep also. Which means body does not need your thinking or your activity for its own basic existence. It has been working like that ever since your body was born also. This simply means that something else is causing the formation of individual ego on a daily basis. Now, if you try to nullify the individual ego, then the one that is the cause for the formation of the individual ego, that comes into picture. That is the natural ego or prakriti that is within you. Now, if you get into that particular state through meditation, through dhyana, that is called Savikalpa Samadhi. Now, in Savikalpa Samadhi, there is no individual ego. In Savikalpa Samadhi, there is this natural ego. In the Savikalpa Samadhi, the person who gets into Savikalpa Samadhi will not be a person as such. In the sense, there will not be the memory recall and the memory storage activity that was happening earlier when the person was in the awakened state. So now this Savikalpa Samadhi is like a dreaming state. Because in the dreaming state, the person is not deciding about what to dream. Dreaming state is not under the control of individual ego. If the dreaming state was under the control of individual ego, then there never would be horrific dreams. There never would be creative dreams. There never would be imaginations in the dreams. There never would be absurd and illogical dreams also. So basically, dreams are not under the control of individual ego. So, just like from an awakened state when you are going to dreaming state, later on when you are going to sleeping state, you are actually going into a domain from the individual ego to the natural ego to the divine ego. That is where Adi Shankara used to keep on discussing more about avasthatraya, more about these three states which are happening on a daily basis. So, through dhyana, if you can get into Savikalpa Samadhi, now this is through effort. When you get into Savikalpa Samadhi, the dream is not under the control of individual ego. In the same way, you will get into a state where there is no individual ego now. In the Savikalpa Samadhi, there is no individual ego. But you exist. Because you are not the ego. You are part of the self. So you exist. Only thing is, you gradually move from one realm to another realm. That means you move from the domain of individual ego into the domain of natural ego. Actually, natural ego was the cause for the formation of the individual ego. So, through dhyana, if you get into Savikalpa Samadhi, you still have that vikalpa there. So, vikalpa. Vikalpa means you still have a choice of what? Of again going back to the domain of individual ego or to go into the domain of divine ego. Because you are now in between. Now, dream has a choice of either going into the sleeping state or coming back into the awakened state. Dreaming state has this choice because the dreaming state is in between the awakened state and the deep sleeping state. In the same way, Savikalpa Samadhi is in between dhyana and nirvikalpa Samadhi. Please understand, it is the natural ego which is causing the formation of the individual ego. Because body does not require any instruction from the brain for all its functionalities. When you cut a nail, when the nail is growing, there is no signal coming from the brain to grow the nail. It is independent of the brain activity. When you cut your hair, when the hair is growing, it is not again getting a signal from the brain to make the growth of the hair. There are many functionalities in this body which do not have any actual control from the brain. That is where the normal people think that everything is controlled by the brain. Everything is controlled by the brain. Who is controlling the dreaming state? And in the dreaming state, why those scenes occur which are not stored in the brain? I have told you the example of benzene ring. And I have told you my own experiences of obtaining many solutions through the dreaming state. When you wake up, when I wake up in the morning, I have found many solutions for general problems also. So is it stored in the brain? No. Brain is only a receptacle of the individual ego, that's all. Brain is given only to the moving life forms so as to have the memory of life or the memory of day-to-day experiences. Brain is not everything. That is where the modern scientists are lost. They still keep on dissecting brain. They keep on seeing into the brain through their microscopes or ultra microscopes, searching for the secret inside the brain, which they do not get at all. Because there is something beyond all the material sciences. The science which is beyond the material sciences is the natural science. The science which is beyond the natural science is the divine science or spiritual science. As long as these scientists start practicing dhyana, as long as they do not try to nullify their own ego, they will never understand this secret. Until then, they'll keep on searching for the secrets inside the brains only. They do not understand the simple fact that when a beautiful flower is blooming out of a plant, there is no brain there. When there is no brain there, who is taking a decision to impart the beauty, to impart the fragrance, to impart the complicated shape into that flower? That is the natural ego. Now, only when you conquer the individual ego, only when you come out of your cocoon, as long as people remain inside their own comfort zones, they are like the worms in the cocoon. They are still bound. It is the individual decision to make yourself free by conquering the individual ego to gradually get into the domain of the natural ego. That is where I again say, Savikalpa, there is a choice. Choice either to construct the individual ego once again or to dissolve the natural ego itself. Vikalpa also means doubt. Doubt means from the individual ego's domain, now you are moving on to the natural ego's domain. Now there also, you will have this natural ego, still you will have a doubt about what you are. Are you the body? Are you the mind? Are you the soul? You still have a doubt. You still can keep doubting on all my sentences also. Whatever I have been telling yesterday, whatever I am telling today, you still have the choice to doubt on my speech also. Now that doubt again indicates that your memory is still impure. Or in your memory, whatever you have, based on that only you are doubting, right? When you have a conditioned memory or a biased memory, when you don't have the knowledge of the self, then naturally you will doubt, because the job of the individual ego itself is to keep on connecting you to the material life. Now, as long as you are stuck in the material life, you will doubt about the spiritual life. That is where Savikalpa, with doubt, with choice. But you are with the higher self. That is why it is Sam-a-adhi. It is Savikalpa Samadhi. It is not Savikalpa Dhyana. You have crossed over from the domain of the individual ego to the domain of natural ego. Just like even in the dreaming state, you will have that ego, right? In the awakened state, you anyhow have the ego and you are connected to all your sense organs and motor organs. But in the dreaming state, you are not connected to the sensory organs or the motor organs. In the dreaming state, you are not connected to the body at all. But still in the dreaming state, you have the ego, right? That is what is Savikalpa. Now, if at all, either through divine grace or through your own culturing, if at all you move into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, then that is the greatest fortune. I have told you the life history of Sadashiva Brahmendra. He effortlessly used to move into the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Till now, I have not come across any other person so wonderful as Sadashiva Brahmendra. Even though I have read the life history of so many other people, so many other spiritual masters, I have not come across the same situations in other spiritual masters' lives as those Sadashiva Brahmendra had in his life. He used to effortlessly get into the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Now look at this. As if a small child effortlessly gets into the state of sleep. Let us say a child was playing. Now child has very less ego. It will have very less contamination of memory and its memory is clean and pure. Now the child can easily go into sleep anytime it wants to go into sleep. Unlike the adults. The adults cannot get into sleep so easily the way in which child goes into sleep. What is the reason? The reason is the child's memory is clean and pure. The child memory is not contaminated and the child does not have a biased memory. But the problem is child does not know it because the child is innocent as well as ignorant. Now gradually when the child grows up, it is stuck up with the social conditioning and it is stuck up with its own experiences of life, and gradually because of the social conditioning or social programming, the child when it becomes an adult, it may corrupt its own memory, it may make its own contents of the memory impure or more and more of selfish activities, selfish behavior, selfish thoughts, and because of which now the child which was innocent and ignorant does not remain innocent when it becomes an adult, but it remains ignorant about the spiritual domain also. Now unless this ignorance is also gone, ignorance also has to be gone and the ignorance has to be filled with the knowledge of the self. Innocence is anyhow gone when the child has become an adult. Now that is what is mental evolution. From the innocent state to the non-innocent state, that is the physical growth. Now from the ignorant state to the non-ignorant state is the mental evolution. As long as that does not happen, Savikalpa Samadhi also is not possible, Nirvikalpa Samadhi also is impossible. Now my audience may ask me the question that have I gone to Nirvikalpa Samadhi? The answer is no. If I go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I may not come back. Or whoever goes into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, they may not come back. Raghavendra Swamiji, when he went into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he had decided before itself that he will get into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he will not come back. He has decided. He had decided. That is why he asked his disciples to cover his body through stone slabs. So, only a great person like Sadashiva Brahmendra would effortlessly get into Nirvikalpa Samadhi and somebody had to actually forcibly bring him out of Nirvikalpa Samadhi that way. So please study his life history in much more detail to understand all these concepts. A child will go into sleeping state so easily, but if the child has to come out of the sleeping state, somebody has to make a noise, somebody has to tap it, somebody has to forcibly bring it out. But when the same child becomes an adult, its mental programming changes and innocence is gone. But if ignorance is not gone, now an adult cannot easily get into a sleeping state also. Right? Whenever we want to sleep, are we able to sleep? We will be able to sleep only if our memory is clean and pure. If there are no disturbance of thoughts. That is the great benefit of practicing dhyana or meditation. It is like taking a mental bath. Now through dhyana, if you get into Savikalpa Samadhi, that is a great fortune. At least from dhyana, if you get into Savikalpa Samadhi, that's a great fortune. That is where all our spiritual masters were there. All of our spiritual masters, in whichever religion it may be, they all have gone into Savikalpa Samadhi state only. Maybe that description was missing in their particular scriptures, or such technical description would have been missing in the other faith systems. Because such terminologies exist only in the yogic path. In the yogic path, there are clear-cut terminologies. In the path of yoga and Vedanta, there are specific terminologies. In fact, Sanskrita language was meant for expressing the spiritual truths only. That is why Sanskrita Bhasha was also called as Deva Bhasha. So, all the spiritual masters had Savikalpa Samadhi. That is when they could conquer their individual ego, and that is when they could develop intuitional abilities. Now, if you get into Savikalpa Samadhi, you are fortunate because you will develop intuitional abilities. You will become a channel to the divine truths. As if a fish has realized water. But fish has not yet merged with water. If the fish merges with water, then that is Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That is where I should again relate these three states to whatever Madhvacharya told as Dvaita, whatever Ramanujacharya told as Vishishtadvaita, and whatever Adishankara told as Advaita. I should relate it in such a way that Dhyana is Dvaita because there is duality. In Savikalpa Samadhi, there is Vishishta Advaita. There is a special unity. And in the case of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there is Advaita, only unity. When you are practicing dhyana or meditation, you are aware that you are bodily existing and you are mentally active. Now, when you get into the state of Savikalpa Samadhi, you will not have a bodily awareness. Just like in the dreaming state, you do not have a bodily awareness. In the same way, in the state of Savikalpa Samadhi, you will not have a bodily awareness. But you will have a mental awareness. Now, with the much greater fortune, if somebody gets into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, then there is no bodily awareness, there is no mental awareness. That is the pure, pristine state of the self, pure domain of God, where there is Nirvikalpa, no choice, no doubt also. Vikalpa means choice, Vikalpa means doubt. In the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there is no further choice. There is no further doubt. fish is one with the water, or the river is one with the ocean. As long as the river remains a pond, let us say there is a pond. Pond is the state of dhyana or dvaita. Pond flowing as a river is the state of savikalpa samadhi or vishishta advaita. Now the river merging into the ocean is the state of nirvikalpa samadhi, which is advaita. When the pond was existing, pond did not know that it was water only. When the river was moving, river also did not know that it was water only. But when the river merges with the ocean, it is water only everywhere. Now think about the definition of samadhi, which Adi Shankara told in his great work called Yogatharavali. Na jagaro napi sushupti bhavo, na jeevitam no maranam vichitram. I had mentioned this earlier also. Now that is the state of nirvikalpa samadhi. Blessed are those spiritual masters who have attained the nirvikalpa samadhi, and blessed are those who again come back to normal life and teach that to the mundane people. But they are very, very rare. Such spiritual masters are very, very rare. As I have told you, I know only about Sadashiva Brahmendra, who could effortlessly get into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and due to some other chance, he used to come back to the awakened state, then he used to interact with the people. He simply lived like a miracle. Now I should tell you, maybe Mukundur Swami also used to get into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and then he used to come back to the awakened state. Maybe, I am not fully sure. Or mostly, he would have been in Savikalpa Samadhi and then coming back to the awakened state. But the example of Sadashiva Brahmendra is unique in its own way. Now, if these three are clearly understood, that's why I kept on speaking the same thing again and again. I kept on telling the same sentences again and again, so that let these facts be clearly understood. Even though it may seem like heavy subject, even though seem like complicated, actually it is not complicated. Complication happened when we are stuck in the physical plane itself. Complication happened when our brains were programmed by the social conditioning. Complications happened when we had more and more connections with the ignorant people only. That is where Adi Shankara says about sadhana chatushtaya, viveka, vairagya, shat sampatti, mumukshutva. I am going to talk about it later on, not now. Now, who is liberated? Let us see that. Who is liberated now? The one who is attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he has attained liberation when he is living itself. That is called Jivan Mukti, free of life. The case of Sadashiva Brahmendra, he did not do anything for his livelihood. He was not worried about breakfast, lunch and supper. He was not worried about buying plots or building houses. He was not worried about producing children and taking care of family. He was not involved in any such activities. So he was totally free of life. In the same way, in the Jain faith system, when they take an initiation into the Digambara system, I should say that they are also free of life. They do not do anything for basic survival also. I should tell you one vachana which Mahadevi Akka has written. Hasivyadode bhikshannagaluuntu, ತೃಷೆಯಾದೊಡೆ ತೊರೆಬಾವಿಗಳುಂಟು, ಶಯನಕ್ಕೆ ಹಾಲು ದೇಗುಲಗಳುಂಟು. ಚನ್ನಮಲ್ಲಿಕಾರ್ಜುನ ದೇವ, ಆತ್ಮಸಂಗಾತಕ್ಕೆ ನೀ ನೆನಗುಂಟು. ಮಹಾದೇವಿ ಅಕ್ಕ ಸೇಸ್, ಹಸಿಬಿಯಾದೊಡೆ ಭಿಕ್ಷಾನ್ನಗಳುಂಟು. If at all I become hungry, then I can beg for food. ತೃಷೆಯಾದೊಡೆ ಕೆರೆ ಬಾವಿಗಳುಂಟು. If I am thirsty, there are ponds and wells where I can draw water and drink. ಶಯನಕ್ಕೆ ಹಾಳು ದೇಗುಲಗಳುಂಟು. If I want to sleep somewhere, there are many old buildings, many physical structures, old physical structures. ಚನ್ನಮಲ್ಲಿಕಾರ್ಜುನ ದೇವ, ಆತ್ಮಸಂಗಾತಕ್ಕೆ ನೀ ನೆನಗುಂಟು. O God, for my own company you are there with me. That was the way Mahadevi Akka told. Now if people live that way, they are totally free of life. They don't do anything for their own material existence. That is called Jivan Mukti. They are liberated when they are living itself. They are not bound by any conditions of society. They are not bound by any conditions of social programming. Now let us not judge. You don't judge that all others are bound or what. Don't come to so urgent conclusions. Right now I am talking about Jivan Mukti only. There are other parts of liberation, other types of liberation. Now Sadashiva Brahmendra was a Jivan Mukta. Avadhuta Nityananda of Kanjangad was a Jivan Mukta. Ramana at Tiruvannamalai was a Jivan Mukta. Which means they did not do anything for their livelihood at all. But whether Ramana was in Nirvikalpa Samadhi or not is not guaranteed, because Ramana used to always remain in the awakened state also later on, unlike Sadashiva Brahmendra. And whether Avadhuta Nityananda of Kanjangad remained in Nirvikalpa Samadhi or not is again a question, because later on he was involved in other activities of getting the caves carved in a stone hill, then walking all the way right from Kanjangad till Ganeshpuri and finally staying there at Ganeshpuri. So I am telling again and again, the case of Sadashiva Brahmendra is unique. I have not read about or I have not heard about any other person living like Sadashiva Brahmendra. Still, I should say Ramana and Avadhuta Nityananda of Kanjangad, they were Jivan Mukta only for that matter, because they did not do anything for their life. Now, coming down from Jivan Mukti to Sadhyo Mukti, all the non-moving life forms, such as plants and trees and cells, they are right now liberated. Sadhya means now itself. Sadhya Mukti means liberated now itself. How? Because they don't have an individual ego at all. The plants and trees and the cells, they do not have a brain at all. They do not have a memory at all. Whatever is the memory in the plant, that is the memory of nature. It is not the memory of the individual plant. Only with us, that means with the Jangama life forms, with the moving life forms, because we have a brain, we have an individual memory. Those life forms which do not have a brain, they do not have an individual memory, but still there is a memory. Inside a plant, still there is a memory for the blooming of the flowers. In the seed, there is a memory to become a tree. Inside a small banyan seed, there is the imprint of a banyan tree. So memory is definitely there. But what type of memory? That is not the individual memory. That is the natural memory. Memory is there with God himself. That is the divine memory. God knows whatever has gone, whatever has happened ever since he started creation, right? So God has an infinite memory, but that is again not a chemical memory or a physical memory. That is beyond chemical and physical. That is a spiritual memory because it is God's dimension, infinite dimension. God also has his own memory, and nature also has its own memory. That is where we say God as Paramatma, Parameshwara, Parabrahman, and nature as we say Adishakti, Jagannmata, Adimaya. Now, all the plants and trees are basically free now itself. All the plants and trees and cells, they are not bound by any social programming. They are not bound by existence life. If a plant obtains water for its roots, plant will remain alive. If it does not obtain water for its roots, it will simply die. That means a plant or a tree is not making any individual effort for existence or for survival. That means they are free now itself. That is called Sadyomukti. So now from Jivan Mukti, we have come down to Sadyomukti. Now let us come down to Videha Mukti. The other moving life forms such as worms, fishes, amphibians, insects, reptiles, birds and mammals, they have a brain, they have an individual memory, and as long as they are alive, they will put an effort to survive. They will search for food, and they will have fight, they will have flight, and they will have starvation. And if at all they obtain food, they live once again. If at all they starve, they die. But what happens later? Once they die, they are liberated. That is called Videha Mukti, free after death. Videha means separation from the body. Once there is separation from the body, there is liberation for all the other moving life forms except human beings. Now this is called Videha Mukti. That means as long as they are living, they are actually putting a lot of effort to survive, but they are not bound by their memory. In the sense, except for the human beings, all other moving life forms are not bound or not attached to whatever is actually created. They are attached only as long as they live. Their memory is not contaminated. Their memory has not become impure. Because there is no social programming. Even though all other moving living beings are also ignorant, that ignorance is not causing in a bondage. Once they die, they are free. Let us say one fish dies in water, fish's body simply gets dissolved in water. Fish does not remain anymore. Even the fish's memory also does not remain as a residual memory anymore. That way, all other moving living beings except the human beings will have Videha Mukti. That means they will be free or they are liberated after their death. But in the case of human beings, I have put a red color here, I have put a red color to the right side. In the case of the human beings, there is a mukti called Krama Mukti. In the case of the normal human beings, I am not talking about the spiritual masters. Spiritual masters would have gone from Dhyana to Savikalpa Samadhi, from Savikalpa Samadhi to Nirvikalpa Samadhi. For all the other normal, common, ordinary human beings, there is Krama Mukti. Means Liberation will happen after many lives. Krama means gradually, after some time, or after some more lives, after some more events. Now, why is this so with human beings? Why is it not like that with the other beings? Answer must be clear to you now. All the other beings are not bound by their 6 enemies and by their 8 arrogances. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsara. These 6 are there even with the animals, even with the birds, even with other creatures. But that is not making them to be bound to their own existence that way. Dhanamada, Vidyamada, Kulamada, Rupamada, Yauvanamada, Balamada, Parivaramada, Adhikaramada. These 8 arrogances are not there with the other living beings. These are there only with the human beings. Now again, don't say that God only gave them to us. Don't say. That is the justification done by these people, and they are increasing their ego that way. Instead of dissolving the ego, if people keep on justifying whatever they are doing, then ignorance becomes a norm with them. Now, the individual ego was imparted, or the freedom was imparted only for enhancing evolution. But with the human beings, in the present time zone or in the present time duration, that purpose has gone astray, or humans have gone in the other direction, where human beings started assuming that they are existing on their own on this surface of earth, and they have the power of doing anything on the surface of earth. But during the time of pandemic, now the human beings should understand they are totally powerless. When nature exhibits its own power, the individuals are totally powerless. Many of the human beings are yet to understand this fact. So why human beings are bound? That is because there is a seed memory in nature. For example, in plants and trees, the seed itself is the memory, and nature uses it for further reproduction. In the case of worms, fishes, amphibians, insects, reptiles, birds and mammals, whether it is Svedaja, Andaja, Jarayuja, there is a spermatozoa and there is a ovum. By means of the bodily fluids only, further reproduction happens. Which means there also nature has its own memory in the case of these basic cells by means of which life is formed again. In the male body, there is a sperm. In the female body, there is an ovum, by means of which life is produced again, or bodies are produced again. Now, as seeds are part of natural memory, even the sperms and ova are part of natural memory. Human beings produce further human beings only, and we should say that that is part of natural memory. That type of reproduction is happening anyhow. But what goes wrong with human beings is that their individual memory, which was there earlier, that should not get transformed, or that should not get transferred, not transformed, it should not get transferred into nature. That is the mistake with the human beings. Means, even after physical death, the memory which was supposed to be completely free and clean and pure and natural, that memory remains stuck and bound. Please recall the basics of Panchakosha: Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. Please recall the basics of chakras and nadis. If the chakras are completely blooming, if the chakras are free, if they are unstruck, if they are loosened, then there can be easy dissolution. But if the chakras are bound, if the Kundalini is staying below, Kundalini is the dormant natural energy. That is what is Adimaya. If that is bound below, and because of the individual ego and because of the 8 arrogances, me and mine, me and mine, I and you are different. As long as this Dvaita or duality exists, now human beings are binding themselves because of this ignorance. Again you may ask, what about the other animals and birds? Are they not bound that way also? Even they have those 6 enemies, right? Even though they have Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsara, even they have, right? Yes, they have. But that was imparted to them by nature itself. The animals and birds, they are neither good nor bad that way. Which means they actually don't know what is good, what is bad. They are living in the way in which nature has created them. And there is a purpose for all that. If a tiger is cruel, there is a purpose for all that. Tiger was made as a cruel, snake was made as poisonous by nature itself. But human beings are not made that way. Human beings are not made as cruel. Human beings are not made as poisonous. They made themselves that way because of ignorance. Which means human beings are partly responsible for their own bondage. And now again you may ask, sir, we did not do anything that way. We don't know. We were not aware. You could say, whether it is a social programming, whether it is a social conditioning, we were not aware. Then I ask you, okay, you were not aware at that time. At least now you are aware. When now you become aware, you correct yourself, you clean yourself, you purify yourself. Again, that is your choice, right? Again, the question comes, whether to be bound or to be liberated is also a choice then. That's why I had told, out of dharma, artha, kama, moksha, in the Hindu marriage system, they do not say that mokshe chanati charami, because liberation is a personal choice. Now, even after these many sessions, let us say even after a few sessions, this presentation is going to be ending. Even after that, you still have a choice to go back to your own previous lifestyle, right? You may again say that whatever Arvinda says is totally, we cannot implement all this in our life. Even though it all seems to be true, we cannot live that way, the way in which Arvinda is living. And you may go back to your previous social program itself. That is again your own choice, right? Why I am attacking you people in this way is because people in many ways have kept on asking me these questions only, that for their karma they are not responsible. That is escapism. People say for their karma they are not responsible. Who else is responsible? They'll blame on many other situations, circumstances, many other people. But when your memory is yours, you are the owner of your karma, right? Ultimately, you are the owner of your own memory. And whatever you store in your memory, the same thing you recall from your memory. That way you are the owner of your own karma. Why don't you accept it? It may be satkarma, it may be dushkarma. It may be good activity, it may be bad activity, whatever. But why don't you accept it? That is the first thing. Once you accept, then you can correct yourself. If you do not accept, nobody can correct you. Because correcting yourself or not is again your own choice. Now ask yourself, who is bound, who is liberated? Ask yourself why human beings have krama mukti and why all others have different types of other mukti. Before going to the next slide, let me tell the conclusion for this particular slide. All the birds and animals and all the other moving life forms except the human beings, they will attain liberation as soon as they die. That is called Videha Mukti, because they are not bound by life that way, because as long as they live as nature has produced them. Now, if at all you have a dog at home, the dog will not have an ambition to buy many things from Mantre Mall or Orion Mall or Phoenix Mall, right? The dog will not have an ambition to go to a jewelry shop or to a garment shop to buy jewelry or to buy dresses, right? The dog will not have an ambition to apply for a revenue site or a BDA site or to buy a flat, go for a housing loan. Dog will not have such ambitions, right? So dog is living the way in which nature has made it. That way, dog's memory is clean and pure. Not only dog's memory, all the other animals and birds, their memories are clean and pure. They are neither aware of death nor aware of birth. They simply live and die the way in which nature has made them. But human beings have been living in an unnatural way, in the sense human beings constructed their own living system, which is unnatural. In the sense, human beings are searching for happiness in the accumulation of materials, which is basically unnatural. Any amount of jewelry you may have at home, any amount of dresses you may have at home, at a time you can wear only one dress, right? Now, why do people accumulate all that thinking that it will make them happy? Actually, they are contaminating their own memory by means of their own excessive selfishness. Of course, that selfishness is there with all other animals and birds that way. But that selfishness is not causing them to be bound. Whereas in the case of human beings, they are being bound partly because of wrong mental conditioning, partly because of fools guiding other fools, ignorant ones dominating on other ignorant ones, and ignoring all the teachings of the spiritual masters. Spiritual masters have been coming on this earth since millenniums, but their teachings have been systematically ignored. It is as if people are putting a chain to their own legs and they are saying, I am bound, and I want to liberate. Now you are responsible for chaining your own legs. Why do you blame something else or somebody else? So that way, as long as your memory is contaminated and as long as your chakras are tightened, grosser, bound, even after your physical death, you will not have liberation. You are stuck with your pranamaya kosha. You are stuck with your manomaya kosha. You are stuck with your vijnanamaya kosha. Because human beings are made up of pancha kosha. Of course, that pancha kosha is there even with the other moving organisms, but it is not as well developed as the human beings. Mind of other beings is not as well developed as the human beings. Intellect of other living beings, moving living beings, is not as well developed as that of the human beings. So human beings have a better evolved panchakosha. There are 5 sheaths. It is not one body. It is actually 5 bodies together. And I have told you about the concept of panchakosha earlier also. Now, the problem with the human beings, why they are not attaining liberation, is because when body is dead, whatever is stored in the individual ego, if it is transferred to the natural ego, that is where the problem is. Let us say when the body is dead, when the brain is dead, memory also should be completely dissolved. But that does not happen because memory gets transferred to the pranamaya kosha, to the manomaya kosha, to the vijnanamaya kosha. Memory which was supposed to be only in the annamaya kosha does not remain that way because of the habitual recall, habitual storage of the same thing day in and day out. For example, let us say one person is a drunkard in this life and he has been drinking alcohol, let us say for 30, 40, 50 years continuously. I have told you the example of my uncle himself. Now, let us say my uncle dies, his physical body is dead, his brain is also dead, but he has been drinking alcohol for decades together, 2 decades or 3 decades continuously. What has happened now? Whatever was basically at the brain gradually had infested the body itself, and whatever was there in the body itself had gradually got transferred into the pranamaya kosha also. From the physical body, that memory gets transferred to the etheric body as well, to the mental body as well, to the intellectual body as well. From the physical body to the pranamaya kosha, to the mind, to the intellect. From the sharira to the prana, to the manas, to the buddhi. Now buddhi is the 4th sheath. Brain is in the 1st sheath. Now what has happened? Transference of memory has happened for a subtle dimension. And whatever was supposed to be partly with the individual ego, that got transferred to the natural ego. That means whatever was there with the individual memory, that got transferred to the natural memory. And what nature will do? Nature will do the same replication again. A banyan's seed will become a banyan tree, right? So whatever is there in nature's memory, that will reproduce itself in its own way. And that is how another body gets formed, and in that another body, the nature's memory gets implanted further. And now my uncle who died in this life, when he gets a next life through the nature's mechanism, and in that body also he will have the same memory of drinking alcohol. Maybe in his next life he will start drinking alcohol much earlier. Now whom he can blame? He cannot blame society. In the next life he may be male, he may be female, we don't know. Because male and female is again XX and XY chromosomes. That we don't know. But even if he is born as a female, he may start drinking alcohol in the early age itself. Now memory got transferred that way. Who is responsible? The individual himself or herself is responsible. They cannot keep on blaming the system that I was made like that, I was made like this because of something else or somebody else. For each person's memory, the person is responsible. Now they can say, I was ignorant, I did not know. Yes, fine. You were ignorant, you did not know. But you always had a choice to know. You always had a choice to shed the ignorance and to become knowledgeable. Because resources were available. Teachings were available. Then also teachings are available. Now also teachings will be available in future also. Spiritual masters have been available then also, they are available now also, they will be available in future also. So the individual cannot say that they did not know. If you did not know, it was your task to know, it was your responsibility to know about the meaning of life. Now you cannot say that because of others I was bound. No, you were not bound because of others. Everyone is bound because of himself or herself. Uddharet atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadayet atmaiva hi atmanaha bandhuhu atmaiva ripuhu atmanaha. This teaching is enough, no? This is there in the Bhagavad Gita, no? If people have understood Bhagavad Gita very well, then they would have understood about rebirth also very well. They would have understood about liberation also very well. Bhagavad Gita has been available since millenniums, right? Now people cannot say, I did not know Bhagavad Gita existed. They cannot say. People know that Bhagavad Gita is existing now also. It was existing earlier also. It will be existing in future also. The people who are bound cannot say that I did not know, that is why I was bound. If you did not know, you were supposed to know. That is why Dr. Swami Geetananda told, it is not the chosen few, it is the few who have chosen either to get liberated or to be bound. That's again a personal choice. So in the case of human beings, it is krama mukti, means with the physical death, memory will not die. Even after the physical death, memory remains in the subtle dimensions. The individual memory gets transferred to the natural memory. And the natural memory again implants it in the physical bodies. And the reincarnation or rebirth continues until in some life my uncle should decide to stop drinking alcohol. And that decision will again be personal. As long as my uncle does not decide, my uncle in this life, in the next life, he may be uncle, he may be aunt, whoever, whatever. But one more point to say, humans will be born as humans only in the next life. Unlike whatever some books say that you will be born as a pig, you will be born as a wretched animal, you will be born as a cockroach. They are all rubbish. Why? Because in your memory, it is a human imprint only. You are born as a human being by the natural memory only. And each human being is thinking as a human being only, not as a cockroach or not as a pig, right? So that way, I am not degrading the other creatures like cockroaches or pigs. They are also as much divine as the other life forms, because inside all those beings, the self itself is there. All those beings are basically the vehicles of the divine self itself. But they are innocent, they are ignorant, they remain like that, and when they die, they will have a videha mukti. Except for the human being, initially they were innocent and ignorant, later on, they are not innocent, they are only ignorant. Now there is a choice not to be ignorant also. That choice has been given by the divine itself to the humans. Whether human beings want to make use of this choice or not is again their own choice. So that way only human beings will have krama mukti. Now let me come to the important point. What about Adi Shankara? Or what about Ramanujacharya? What about Madhvacharya? What about Basavanna? What about Allama Prabhu? Now, they were all working very well when they were alive, right? Adi Shankara lived for 32 years. He worked heavily, right? Adi Shankara did not live like Sadashiva Brahmendra. I am not comparing both of them, but I am only discussing the lives of both of them. Adi Shankara worked lifelong. He taught people about spirituality. He wrote books. He wrote commentaries about spirituality. So what should we say? Adi Shankara did not get into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He was a karma yogi. He was a jnana yogi. He was a bhakti yogi. Now the question is, did Adi Shankara attain Jivan Mukti? Did Adi Shankara attain Sadhyo Mukti? Did Adi Shankara attain Videha Mukti? Which one? Which one? Adi Shankara did not attain Jivan Mukti. Means he did not get into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He was always teaching and writing and traveling. Which means Adi Shankara did not have a Jivan Mukti. He was not free of life. He was with the life. And Adi Shankara did not attain Sadhyo Mukti. Why? Because he was not with the natural ego. He was with the individual ego. Which means he was involved in writing books and in teaching. Right? So we cannot say that he was like a Sadhyo Mukta. So finally, Adi Shankara attained Videha Mukti. In the sense, when he died, he got liberated. Which means, when he died, his individual memory did not get transferred into natural memory. In the sense, Adi Shankara did not have these 8 arrogances or the 6 enemies, right? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Madamatsara, Adi Shankara was not having. And Dhanamada, Vidyamada, Kulamada, Rupamada, Yavvanamada, Balamada, Privaramada, Adhikaramada, Adi Shankara was not having, right? It was the same case with all the Acharyas. It was the same case with all the Sharanas. I should tell you about the Sharanas. There is something called Shatsthala Siddhanta. Bhakta, Mahesha, Prasadi, Pranalingi, Sharana, Aikya. These are called Shatsthala Siddhanta in the Veerashaiva philosophy. Bhakta, Mahesha, Prasadi, Pranalingi, Sharana, Aikya. These 6 correspond to the 6 places of Kundalini, from Swadhisthana to Manipura to Anahata to Vishuddha to Ajna to Sahasrara. When the ego gradually transforms itself into some subtle dimension, from Mooladhara, when it moves to Swadhisthana, there is a Kundalini awakening, and Swadhisthana is Bhakta. Manipura is Mahesha. Anahata, Prasadi. Vishuddha, Pranalingi. Ajna, Sharana. Sahasrara, Aikya. Aikya means what? One with the divine. Aikya, word came from Eka. Eka means Advaita. No duality, only unity. Aikya means what? Liberation. Aikya means merging with the divine. So all the Sharanas, they had Videha Mukti. That is what is called as Karma Yoga. Basavanna's greatest sentence was Kaya Kave Kailasa. That means keep on working lifelong. Keep on working for the welfare of oneself and the others. Keep on working for the welfare of life, not just the livelihood. So it doesn't mean that everybody should be having Jivan Mukti only. Please understand that. That is why I was stressing this point. Even though we have a high-level role model of Sadashiva Brahmendra, it is not necessary that everybody should get into Nirvikalpa Samadhi only. That is not necessary. Only few fortunate ones will get into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That is why paths are many, choices are many, goal is one. Goal is what? Liberation, moksha, kaivalya. For liberation, either it can be Jivan Mukti or it can be Videha Mukti. Human beings have got now these 2 choices. There is nothing called Sadhyo Mukti as such. Either Jivan Mukti or Videha Mukti. Sadhyo Mukti is there only for the life forms which do not have brain at all. Now, when you are in Savikalpa Samadhi, we can say that you are at Sadyomukti. But the Savikalpa will not remain that way. From the Savikalpa, either you have to come to Dhyana or to come to Nirvikalpa. From the dream, you have to either come to awakened or to sleeping state. Dreaming state is never a permanent state. Same way, Sadyomukti is only a temporary state for the human beings. Sadyomukti is the basic state for cells, plants and trees which do not have brains at all. They don't have individual memory at all. Otherwise, Sadyomukti is not there for the human beings. For the human beings, now there are only two choices, either Jivan Mukti or Videha Mukti. Either to have a liberation after the physical body is dead. Now, how to attain liberation? For which you will have to have a pure, clean memory. That's all. How to purify and clean memory again? That is the path of yoga. That is the path of Vedanta. That is the path of spirituality. I keep talking about yoga and Vedanta because I am the practitioner of the same. Even with the other faith systems also, the basic purpose is to purify the memory only, nothing else. Whether it is Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or Jainism or Farsism or Yehudism or whichever. In whichever ism, the basic purpose is only to cleanse the memory, to purify the memory, nothing else. So that way, if the memory can be purified, then as soon as the physical death happens, liberation happens. That is Videha Mukti. Now, if you get into the path of yoga, if you get into meditation, if you are fortunate, if you have divine grace, you can attain Jivan Mukti also. These are the two choices for the human beings, not the Sadhya Mukti. Otherwise, all of you have the great choice of Krama Mukti, which means life after life, life after life, life after life. Again, for this also people may say that, why should we have liberation, sir? Why don't you have life again? Yes, that is also your choice. You can have a life once again. In fact, I want to have a life once again because in every life, I want to teach these things only again and again. I want to practice these things only and teach these things only again and again. If that is happening, that is good for me, good for you, right? We want Swami Vivekananda should be born once again, right? Because such a great person should come back again and again, right? Now, if Swami Vivekananda comes back, if it is his choice, he has told already that unless everybody gets liberated on this earth, he does not want to have liberation also. Now, if he comes back again and again, that is his choice also, and that is good for the human beings also. But if that happens, that is good, let us say. But what if my uncle comes back as a drunkard? What if you with your unclean memory come back with the unclean memory only again and again? You will have suffering again and again. You will cause suffering also again and again, right? If the ignorant person and a selfish person is born again, he will be born again. He will be born again as he or she with the selfishness and ignorance only. And there will be a cause causing the harm to oneself also, causing the harm to others also, right? Think about Aurangzeb being born once again. When Aurangzeb is born once again, he died with the impure memory and he will be born again with the impure memory, right? That will go on. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jathare shayanam, iha samsare khaludussare, kripaya pare pahi murare, Adi Shankara has told. If all good people are born once again, that is good for the earth, good for the humans. But that is not guaranteed because there are less number of good people, more number of bad people. Bad people are anyhow going to be born again and again with the same imprints of memory. That is what is Krama Mukti. That is why All these things have to be taught to everyone. Then later on it is their choice whether to have Krama Mukti or to have Videha Mukti or to have Jivan Mukti or to have Sadhya Mukti also, if possible. So I had a lengthier discussion with this particular slide. I think let me go on to the next slide at least now. In the next slide, the constitution of the human beings. The body requires food and breath. Now, through this food and breath, the body produces prana and the body energizes the sense organs. Now, the sense organs give the inputs to the mind, and the prana is also energy to the mind. Now, the mind produces thoughts and emotions. The mind which produces thoughts and emotions, they are the inputs to the soul. Now the soul produces the instincts by using thoughts and emotions. The instincts become the input to the mind. Now based on the instincts, the mind produces the feelings. Feelings become the input to the body. Based on the feelings, the body produces the actions. This is the basic constitution of the human beings. Body requires food and breathing. Body produces actions. Mind requires prana and senses. Mind produces feelings. Soul requires thoughts and emotions. Soul produces instincts. You can see the cycle here. In what way human beings are connected to nature also. From the nature only you will get food, you will get breath, right? By means of which body is functioning, and body itself is an ecosystem, self-sustained ecosystem which produces prana and it energizes the sense organs, and mind gets these inputs. Mind is a self-sustained ecosystem which produces the thoughts and emotions, and soul uses it. Soul is a self-sustained ecosystem which produces instincts, mind produces feelings, body produces actions. Body is physical, mind is astral, soul is causal. The meaning of astral means of the stars. Stars belong to the universe. Universe is filled with gravitation. Universe is filled with magnetism. So mind is basically astral. Mind is not of the physical form, it is of the astral form, means it is of the energetic form. And soul is the causal. Causal in the sense that is the cause for all other things. Body requires varied things now. Mind requires varied experiences now. But soul requires varied learnings. Body always wants variety of things. Mind always wants variety of experiences. Soul also wants what? Variety of learnings. Body is in need of good food. Mind is in need of good company. Soul is in need of good vibration. Dhyanam nirvishayam manaha. Body requires good food, variety of food again, and to experience variety of things. Mind requires good company, good friendship, good relationships, human relationships, along with varied experiences. Whereas soul requires good vibration, by means of good vibration, good resonance, by means of good resonance, varied learnings. I hope you and me are in resonance, and I hope you and me are sharing good vibration. That is how teaching learning is happening. I am learning by my own teaching. Whether you learn or not is your choice. By my teaching, I am learning. That is again my choice. I will not be able to complete this slide today, But I will start this slide now. There's a God-given immunity check with the human beings. I have been telling you about the 5 upapranas. I had shown you the 5 main pranas called prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. But here we have 5 upaprana called naga, kurma, krikala, devadatta, dhananjaya. Naga is the one which causes burping and vomiting. Kurma is the one which causes blinking of the eyes. Krikala is the one which causes sneezing and coughing. Devadatta is the one which causes yawning. Dhananjaya is the one which causes wheezing. Now, again, as I had told you, everything in the body is not governed by the brain. There are many functionalities that happen in the body which are happening independent of the brain. Always, signal from the brain is not required for the organs to function. As I've been telling again and again, brain is the storehouse for memorizing the experiences of life. Brain is not the whole and soul governor of the body's functionality. This many people are yet to understand. As I've been telling you, they are trying to find the secrets only inside the brain, which is not there actually. So, whenever you have a burping and whenever you have a vomiting, now there is a decision making happening in the body, and the body part that is involved is either tongue or stomach. Tongue and stomach both are involved in burping and in vomiting. Whenever a poisonous food is there inside the stomach, a decision is taken that this food should not be digested, and that is when vomiting happens. And that is happening because of upaprana called naga. That is why I have kept the title as God-given immunity check. Means when the food goes inside the stomach, a decision is taken whether to keep the food inside the stomach or to send it out through the same mouth through which it came. Otherwise, if the same food which is toxic, if it goes to the intestine will be toxified. That is why a decision is taken at the stomach to expel it out through the mouth itself. So this way, whenever you feel a vomiting sensation, you immediately vomit it out because body is giving you a signal. Many times people think vomiting is a bad sign, and people think that vomiting is a bad signal for health. They are wrong. Vomiting is a signal given by the body that I don't want to digest this food. That is what happens when, for the first time when people drink alcohol, they will have vomiting sensation. That is when the body says, I don't want this. And it is vomiting out of the mouth itself. Some people take it as a challenge and drink more and more. And some people take it as an insult. It is neither an insult nor a habit to be followed. It is a God-given immunity check where the body is telling you, I don't want this. Now, if you want to check yourself, you try to drink the neem juice. This is a self-check. Try to drink the neem leaf juice. You will immediately have a vomiting sensation because it is so bitter. When it is so bitter, when the tongue tastes it, immediately body vomits it out. Actually, when the tongue tastes it, you will have a vomiting sensation there. That is why I have put a tongue here. As soon as the tongue tastes a particular food item as very much bitter, it will not allow it to go into the stomach as well. Immediately a vomiting sensation will happen at the throat itself. Now let us say you will drink some highly salty water. Purposefully you can dissolve salt into water and you can drink it. Now when you drink that much of salty water, you will immediately have a vomiting. Why? Because body says, I don't want this much of salt. Salt is again an irritant. Salt is toxic inside. So body will say, I don't want to digest this salty water. Immediately vomit it out. In fact, in Ayurveda, out of Panchakarma, Vamana Virechana Bastinasya Raktamokshana, Vamana is a therapy. Vomiting is a therapy to cleanse the stomach. That is why this Naga is a God-given immunity check, where when you get burping, it indicates that stomach is almost full. You should not ingest food again. That burping is the first signal. In general, when you are consuming food, as soon as you get the very first burp, you should stop eating, because body is telling you, enough, now I'll have to digest this food. If you further keep consuming food, there will be vomiting sensation. Let me tell you my one small example. Many years before, I went to meet my engineering classmate, who is my very good friend even now. He invited me to their farmhouse, where his parents are also living. And on a particular Sunday, I went there to pay a visit to them. My friend was very happy that I came to meet him. He took me to his coconut plantation, and forcefully he made me to drink 2 tender coconuts. He told his men at the coconut plantation to cut 2 tender coconuts, and forcefully he made me to drink 2 tender coconuts. Okay, then after about 1 hour, we came back to his house, and at his house, my stomach was still full with tender coconut water. Now, after about 2.5 hours, they had prepared a good lunch, because I had visited them. So during lunch also, he kept on forcing me to have more and more food. But I was telling him, I am already full with the 2 tender coconut and I cannot eat more. Still he was saying, you rarely come to meet us, you have to eat more. And out of his own hospitality, he kept on forcing me to consume food more and more. And out of force, I kept on consuming. Now what happened afterwards was, without my own knowledge, suddenly vomiting started and I had to rush to the bathroom there, and whatever I had eaten, the lunch as well as the tender coconut, everything went out. In fact, at that time, they all felt a little bit odd. They were all embarrassed. Even my friend was feeling unhappy that he only forced me to eat a lot. Then I told him, don't worry. Actually, complete family members were embarrassed. I told to my friend, you don't have to worry. We cannot force the body to consume on its own. Body has its own intelligence. You only displayed your hospitality. You don't have to feel embarrassed. And I am also not feeling embarrassed or insulted. My body has given me the signal. Now this was a lesson to me also. This was a lesson to them also. That body should not be forcibly made to consume when it is not having an ability to digest that much. So I had that vomiting. That vomiting need not be taken as an insult. That is a God-given immunity check. That is why in Ayurveda, Vamana is a therapy. So that is the first Upaprana called Naga. Burping is its first signal. Vomiting is its next signal. As soon as burping happens, you should understand the signal. You should stop eating. If you stop eating, you are giving a chance for the stomach to digest whatever is there inside. Now, if you want to have a self-check, you can try out drinking neem juice or salt water and you will have the vomiting sensation there. Now, the lifestyle issue is the liquor. Whenever people drink liquor, In the beginning, body gives a signal by means of vomiting, saying it is not required for the body. But the problem with the stupid, ignorant human beings is that they remain selfish and cunning, and they make it a habit lifelong. If they make it a habit lifelong, later on, this naga will become completely inactive. Means this upaprana becomes completely inactive. The God-given immunity check will not work anymore with those people who have infested the body with the wrong thing. That is where I say human beings live a lifestyle worse than animals. Even though God has given an immunity check, these human beings are so stupid and so ignorant. Even though they are not innocent, they purposefully remain arrogant, and they keep on satisfying their own dirty habits or bad habits. They will not bother about the God-given immunity check also. Later on, this particular immunity check will not work with their bodies because they have ignored the initial symptoms. Later on, body will keep on taking whatever poison comes in the form of liquor. Now, how do you keep this naga, upaprana, intact or functioning? In the yogic practices, we have this yogic therapy called Shwana Mudra, and we have one therapy called Agnisara Kriya. We have practices called Shwana Mudra and Agnisara Kriya, by means of which we keep the Naga Upaprana working fine, functioning fine. Anyway, when the practical when the practical classes start, you will be learning all these methodologies. I have already told you about the Ayurvedic therapy called Vamana. So for today, I have discussed the Upaprana Naga. In the next session on Friday, let me start discussing about the next Upaprana called Kurma. Let me stop the session for today. See you on Friday. Take care. Before that, let me see how many are really listening to me. Okay, I'm happy that at least the regular people are regular. Irregular people are always irregular. Okay, fine. See you on Friday. Until then, take care and goodbye.